This is the Unregistered podcast, and I'm Thaddeus Russell. This is a show about ideas, people, and behaviors that are considered inappropriate, out of bounds, or beyond the pale. The things you're not supposed to talk about if you're a school teacher, a college professor, a businessman, a politician, a parent, a neighbor, or even a podcast host. These are the things you're not supposed to say or even think if you're a good liberal, a good conservative, or a good citizen. Each week, I'll interview a person who has something bad to say. They might be a journalist or a professor. They might be a porn star or a drug dealer. They might just be an ordinary person with an ordinary job who doesn't care about the rules of polite society. I'm not interested in breaking the rules just to be a troublemaker. I'm interested in people who break the rules of conventional thought and to expand the scope of what is possible to say in our society. I'm interested in people who make me think. All of the major social media companies, Twitter, Facebook, and the like, get major tax breaks and even direct subsidies from the government that their competitors do not. They therefore have a monopoly, essentially, on most of the flow of information in our society. They also give away, as we know, our data not just to corporations wanting to advertise to us, but to state, city, and federal government agencies. Now is the time, I think, more than ever, for an alternative. An alternative may be like something called Minds.com. This is my interview with the founder and CEO of Minds.com, Bill Ottman. So I'm here with the founder and CEO of Minds.com, Bill Ottman. Thanks for coming on the show. And I have a lot of things to ask you, and a lot of things I hope to learn from you. I think I will. But let me admit something right off the bat, Bill. This is really embarrassing. You probably won't like me for this, but when you asked me to come on the show, I actually immediately said yes, because I thought you were something different, but something not as good as you are. I thought you were. What I remember is the Milo Yiannopoulos years, right? The era when there was the deplatforming going on, and Milo is getting deplatformed, and then other people, right wingers, are getting deplatformed, including several people who have been on this show have been deplatformed. Like Gavin McInnes has been wiped from the face of the earth. And at that time, I remember a lot of these sort of alt-right types talking about having to build their own social media network. I thought Minds was that. I thought Minds was Milo's project that I thought never went anywhere, but then you popped up. So, and obviously I didn't know a goddamn thing about you or Minds, but I thought it was that, which would have been a fascinating conversation. So then you guys gave me a subscription, or you made me, or I got into Minds, and I looked around, and the first person.
Oh no, you don't. Well, it is free.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, whatever. You hooked me up. I got it. You gave me a link, and I joined Minds. And the first person I saw on Minds was Abby Martin. So, who's been on the show? Who's definitely not an alt-right person. So it is not an alt-right thing. Although I did keep scrolling, and I'd say the flavor, the vibe, I would say tends to skew more right-wing than on Twitter and Facebook. Is that fair to say?
I think that it's evolved over the years. Our initial growth surge was actually largely progressive, but then, in the last 3-4 years, it's been, way more libertarian kind of right-wing free speech people. But it's odd that free speech has become politicized, but we can get into that later.
It sure has. So it did not, you don't come from the alt-right. That wasn't, I had this totally wrong.
No.
Yeah. That's what I thought.
No, definitely not.
So I was totally wrong about you.
So there are some free speech platforms that are, very polarized from the top down, and they make it clear like, hey, listen, we, are conservatives, and this is, for conservatives. But no, that's the opposite of scalable, and nor does it reflect my philosophy.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So just tell us exactly what Minds is.
So Minds is an open source social network. It's an app, feels similar to apps that you use for social media,
Mm-hmm.
but basically everything's inverted. So, we don't require any personal information, obviously not surveilling everybody. All the code is totally transparent, no sketchy algorithms. We're not suppressing people's reach. We have a First Amendment based content policy. We are rewarding creators for their contributions. So we have this whole monetization option where in both fiat currency and crypto, you can earn for your contributions. And, we really think the future of social media is much more of a cooperative structure. So we're actually community owned. Over 1,500 members of our network actually own stock in the company. We did an equity crowdfunding round a few years back, and we're going to be doing more of that. So I just love that. It's just, so even from the corporate structure to the code, we sort of have this open, transparent and accessible system.
Mm-hmm. So I hate Facebook. I strongly dislike Instagram, and I don't trust Twitter. I assume you have similar, probably even more negative views of those companies. But what are the problems that Minds is attempting to answer?
So, helping people be heard, for sure, helping people become independently sustainable, independent financial stability for creators, I think is a huge goal of ours. Generally speaking, though, hyper transparency with regards to our policy, our code, so that people know that it's not spying on them. It's publicly audited. A lot of the scary part of what happens on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and others is this soft censorship, where when you post, only especially on Facebook, only 5% or less of your followers by default are seeing that post. That Facebook is deciding what is going to go into your news feed, and that's based on thousands of variables that we don't know because they won't show us. But it didn't used to be like that. You used to be able to reach most of your audience, which is the purpose of social media. It's a communication mechanism between subscription and subscribers. So the fact that they have put a restriction in between that communication opening is really damaging, and I think it's dishonest. They brought everybody in under this assumption that you're going to be able to reach the people that subscribe to you, and then you can't. So to me, that's a damaging component of what's supposed to be a global communication platform.
Why do they do that? Is this what's called throttling? Is that what you're talking about?
Throttling. Yeah. So there's a couple elements. There's straight up shadow banning, where, based on certain language that you use, their AI and machine learning can detect, they'll just lower your voice. If you say bad words, for instance, in a thread, Twitter will hide that down because it's, they consider certain words to be toxic or
I didn't
whatnot.
know that.
Yes,
Cool.
they do that. And now they do that to prevent bullying and whatnot, but obviously you can use swear words and not be a bully. So, the AI doesn't know how to detect context or nuance or sarcasm or any of that kind of stuff. But then, beyond that, they think that they know what you're going to engage with better than you. So based on what you interact with, Facebook thinks, hey, based on how you've been behaving for the last, for your entire history here, we think that rather than the most recent post that you subscribe to, that this thing from 2 days ago that you're not even subscribed to, but we're pretty sure you're going to like it because you watched this. There's all these variables that we don't understand. So what's at the top of your feed, you don't know why it's there. It's there because you engaged with it, or they think you might want to engage with it. But that's just like an advertising system. I mean, it's basically, and they want to show you ads.
Right.
So yeah, most people don't know. They just think, oh, it's my news feed. Like, I subscribe to that person, and Facebook's going to show me what they post sometimes.
But why would they stop me from having all of my followers see my posts?
Because the real estate is valuable, and they want to optimize the engagement in their metrics. The more engagement that they're getting, and to be honest, a lot of their data science, I'm sure, shows that it works. So they do, in some senses, know what you're incredibly likely to click on.
Right.
More likely than the next chronological post based on who you subscribe to.
Mm-hmm.
But we would argue that isn't the ethical approach. I think algorithms can be useful, but it should be a secondary option. You shouldn't be getting in between people and who they're following. So does that make sense?
Yeah. So Minds doesn't use algorithms like that?
We do, but they're secondary. So you can, like the core raw feed, we're never going to interfere with. If you want to go to a filtered feed to see, the most engaged posts of the people you subscribe to, then you can do that. But we're not going to get in the way for the core feed. So I'm not going to say that algorithms are bad. That's like saying math is bad.
Right. Sure. Yeah. But it's it's the way the algorithm is built and what it's intended to do, right? And if
you're able to opt out of it.
Okay. And so with your algorithms, you're able to opt out of them?
You're not even in it by default.
Not even, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so we have the algorithms on Facebook that steer us in all kinds of directions that we're not even aware of, that we don't choose. That's one problem you're trying to answer, right?
Yep.
What are the other problems? I have a long list. I just want to hear what your list of problems are.
So there's the privacy stuff, obviously. Yeah. I mean, they're targeting you. Some of the stuff they're showing you in your news feed is based on where you just were, where your geolocation is telling them. So, if you walk by a Chipotle, they're going to show you the Chipotle. It's controversial whether they're listening to the microphone. I think, they deny it, but we don't know. They can't prove it to us because they won't show us the code. Your browser, anywhere where you go in your browser, even if you're not on Facebook, they know. Okay. So they're following you around the internet, generally speaking.
Again, for advertising purposes, right?
Yep, for advertising purposes.
Okay. Well, actually, hold on there. Hold on. Not just advertising purposes. Well, we don't know, but probably advertising purposes and probably governmental purposes too. Don't we think?
Yes, well, we know that we have the PRISM program, which Snowden exposed, talks about the revolving door between all of the major social networks and the NSA.
Yep.
So, that's definitely going on.
Last week, I told you about our brand new sponsor, Paloma Verde CBD, which is this wonderful new company out of San Antonio, Texas. And I'm proud to announce that a lot of unregistered listeners are now Paloma Verde customers. Paloma Verde is owned and operated by Carlos and Vanessa Abelar out of San Antonio. And I love this company for a lot of reasons. Number one, they chose the green dove, Paloma Verde, as their symbol because they're big peace advocates, something I care a lot about. I love this company because they were denied loans and even accounts with banks because they're a marijuana-related business. I love this company because it started because Vanessa and Carlos's fathers both suffered from chronic pain, something that I've dealt with, and CBD helped them. I am so proud to be sponsored by Paloma Verde, and if you are buying CBD right now, you may as well get the 25% discount that is offered by going to their store, palomaverdestore.com, and using the discount code RENEGADE. But let me tell you before you do that, what they have. They have fantastic gummies and soft gels, which I've been using every day for the last month, and I swear by. Now that I'm washing my hands all the goddamn time because of the quarantine and the virus, their lotions and their salves are as good as any, and I use them also daily, and I recommend them highly. But recently, I've gotten into tinctures. They have a mint flavored tincture, which I love, and the regular flavored tincture, which I like even more because you can put it into any drink at any time. So if you're buying CBD, get it from a good company. Get it from good people with fantastic products. Paloma Verde CBD. Go to palomaverdestore.com and use the discount code RENEGADE for 25% off.
So they argue that they do this because of advertising, and they want to maintain a free service. But they could just have people pay them to not be spied on, but they don't even let you pay to not be spied on. Seems like a lot of people would pay for that.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people who care about this. So there's that, and there's the revenue sharing to us is critical. So there's all this money coming in, and the creators are not getting anything. They're starting to roll out little programs. I mean, YouTube does have a revenue sharing system, though it's sketchy. It's rife with demonetization, and they're basically deciding who gets to get paid.
Yep.
Which we're trying to avoid in our system, and we have some ways that we're avoiding that. But we just believe that the creators who help us grow deserve to get paid. And that's why we want the creators and the people to be owners of the company itself. And also, if we have money coming in, we want to be sharing it with the people who help create it. And, now that everybody's remote, distributed work is changing. I think everybody obviously is starting to see how becoming independently wealthy is way better than having a job that you hate. So I've certainly learned that, and I want to help people achieve that, because being able to work doing what you love is, that's the goal.
How do creators get paid on Minds?
So we have a few different systems. We have a rev share system. So our pro channels, just for the page views that they drive to us, we're paying out an RPM for every 1,000 page views, which is how it works on YouTube. We do have ads, but we don't spy with them. So it's similar to algorithms are neutral, depending. Ads are neutral too. Advertising is promotion. So we're not anti-ad. That would be a little bit, I think, shallow look at how the world works. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So we say, listen, we're not going to spy on you to target you, but if you want to opt into certain categories of what we call boosts, then you can get them. And we're working on trying to share that with the creators too. We also allow creators to receive subscription payments from their fans on a monthly basis for different kinds of perks and whatnot. And we're working on even more types of monetization, where I could send you a message and offer you $50 to respond to me. We're trying to monetize every little element of the site, so that just giving people more options, because there's everyone has a different area where they might have an easier time making money. We're also doing like a commission program, where if people help us drive subscriptions to our premium accounts, we'll give you like 25% of that on a perpetual basis. So all of this, like, radical amounts of revenue sharing.
Okay. And Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, I suppose Instagram, but certainly Facebook and Twitter are notorious for censorship. Do you guys censor in any way?
We have to, only within the law of the United States. So, we're not like a fully distributed torrent network where like it can't get taken down. We're trying to actually integrate tools where we can sync up with those types of networks so that it's not even on us. But when it is on us, if it's legal, then it can stay. And for, true threats of violence and, serious harassment, but that's illegal. So that's what we'll take down.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. That's pretty
good. And we offer we've worked really hard on filtering tools, so like you don't have to see what you don't want to see. Sometimes stuff peeks through, and that's one of our biggest challenges is we don't want people to see stuff they don't want to see. But when you have a totally open platform, it's like, it's pressing through. It's trying to be seen. So we're working on that. We also have one of the coolest things we worked on in the last year was this jury system for our moderation process. So if people feel like we made a decision that is wrong, like we flag something that shouldn't be flagged, then they can appeal it to a randomized jury of 12 active users who are unconnected from that person to create some sort of degree of objectivity. And then those users vote on it. And that has proven really successful. Most of the time our team is right, but like a very small percentage that, they've made some mistakes. And so we built that system to protect ourselves from ourselves.
Okay. And how do we know that you're not working with the NSA?
You don't. We can so creating trustlessness where we're trying to create a system where you don't have to trust us when working with servers. There's going to be a degree of trust required. So I mean, I'm not going to say that we've never been contacted. Not by the one that you just mentioned, but put it this way: every social network gets requests
from the government.
Yes,
government agencies.
Oh yeah.
Like intelligence agencies. And law enforcement agencies.
Yes.
You've been contacted by intelligence and or law enforcement agencies.
The latter.
Law enforcement agency.
Not to work with us on like a surveillance program, but like a request for information on a certain on people. And so our stance on this has been, we don't require users give us any personal information, and our messenger is like encrypted, so we don't even have access to that information to hand over. We want to put ourselves in a position where when law enforcement contacts us, which they are contacting any network with any kind of user base, they're contacting.
Okay.
So that's just happening.
Yep.
And we want to put ourselves in a position where we don't have anything to give them other than what is there. So that's why we don't even require anything really. So
because you're not keeping data on me, you mean?
Right. I mean, there's a minimal amount of data that we have, but it's not really what they're asking for,
But how do I know that? How do I know you're not keeping data that the FBI wants?
Because you can look at you can look at our code.
That's it. Okay. That's the whole key to everything here. The business model and the politics of it. It's the politics and the business model of Minds is based on the open source code, correct?
For sure. That is the way, not that anyone listening or you is necessarily going to go and inspect our code, but we have done and published audits, and anyone can audit our code to make sure that there's not any, psychographic profiles being created. And so, we want to continually put ourselves in more of a position to not have the ability to hand over information. So that's an extreme technical challenge though, because just the nature of the internet, there's data trails. I mean, in order to sign into a website, data is involved. So the idea of like a data-less system is just it doesn't exist.
Right. Okay. Pretty good. I think, so we know that Facebook and Twitter, their headquarters are in office buildings that were given to them tax-free by the cities and counties in which they are. All the social media giants have gotten major subsidies across the country, hundreds of millions of dollars, I believe, in tax breaks. So they just don't pay taxes that the rest of us have to pay. That like their competitors have to pay. I'm assuming you have not gotten any such love from the government?
No.
Any such help?
No. Very, very bootstrapped. Our community has been there for us, and it's a collective effort with our community to make this happen. We did a fundraising round with a blockchain focused group who we raised a bunch from. And that has been huge for us to just jam out the next level of development, getting everything fully polished and competitive. But we're still not there. I think, you know, in a few more months, the app is going to feel pretty indistinguishable from the mainstream apps. We're not there yet. We're sort of in the midst of an overhaul.
Cool. How so? How's it going to look?
It's just going to look smoother, and you're actually not going to think about how it looks. You know, the goal is to not see anything that makes you think about what you're looking at. It just lets you do what it's like a non-experience experience.
Right.
Is actually the goal of user experience design in a way.
Yeah.
Totally seamless. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. I'm looking forward to that. Yeah. So, I mean, just getting back to the rigged system you're up against. I mean, so we're giving massive subsidies and tax breaks to your competitors out of our tax dollars. It's not, I don't choose to do this. They take the money from me and they give it to Mark Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey. And then Mark Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey probably, almost definitely, use my data and give it to law enforcement and intelligence agencies. And they also keep me from disseminating the ideas I want to disseminate to the people I want to disseminate. They also keep me, or at least they try to stop me from getting information that I might want to have. That's why I think that they are basically arms of the government at this point. I mean, do you go that far?
So one thing that I can say without really saying is that we may have had conversations with certain agencies on the other side of this.
Oh.
That may be looking at the malpractice of those companies.
Wait, not within the government, you know, non-government?
From possibly anti-competitive standpoint. If that makes sense.
You're talking about antitrust regulators within the government have come to you.
There are conversations happening in that regard.
But why would they come to you?
Well, because Facebook banned us for 2 years.
Meaning Minds can't even have its own Facebook page.
Well, they would allow us to have the page, but our links were for a while, completely blocked in Messenger, and it would bring up this alert that would say that this is a harmful link. And they would also, before posting one of our links into the newsfeed, you would have to go through this whole CAPTCHA process and say, make sure, you know, you shouldn't trust this site type stuff. And then we actually, through a friend of a friend, got it lifted, but it was like that for over a year. And that had hugely detrimental consequences to us.
Yeah.
Additionally, Google Play banned our app for a year. We got that lifted as well. And that, you know, a lot of this comes back to the content issue. So they were, you know, people may have reported things, and, you know, they were treating us like we endorsed the content that was being reported, but we're a social network like them.
Right.
So, you know, it is what it is. I mean, Apple has done similar questionable things with our app. They forced us to take out a lot of our monetization features, and we recently got those back in. But it's just been like nonstop nonsense dealing with all of them. And they're just putting blockades in our growth in every way possible from all of the companies. So it's just ridiculous. Like, and actually the way that I got us back on the Google Play Store was because they had suspended us because of a sort of nudish image. And which actually had a blur over it. So I was like, dude, we had a blur. I mean, what's the problem?
We had a blur.
Well, because Twitter allows pornography.
I know, it has lots of it.
And they're not getting banned from Google Play Store. So, I think that is just the ultimate hypocrisy. And I sent them evidence of that. And within a week, they changed it back. But it's basically just it's chaos in those. There's no consistency. There's all sorts of internal battles happening. There's at Twitter, there's definitely people within Twitter who want free speech, but at the end of the day, their policy team has been totally overrun by more authoritarian types. And so, it's just from every angle. But so the government is not sort of decide. It's a multi-headed beast. So, there's parts of the government that may want some of those practices to stop. Like I got invited actually to the White House about for the social media summit to talk about some of this stuff. And because, Trump is pissed off about this stuff too.
That's right.
He doesn't like what they're doing. He wants his likes to be going up, not down.
See, Bill, Donald Trump's on your side. That means you're evil.
Yes. Well, you should have seen the press coverage of that event. We actually got labeled as I think it was a Vice article that said, far right social site gets invited to, Trump summit, like that kind of I've spoken with these people and I explained to them, our philosophy and how we do have actually a balance of users but they don't care. They just,
they labeled you far right.
They did. Yeah.
That's why I had the impression of you that I had. Probably.
Yes. There have been a few publications that have just run with that narrative, regardless of the facts.
That's how it got into my head that you were like Milo's best friend, basically. I assume that's what was going on here. And you're not at all, right?
No. I mean, I think he might have an account, but I don't, I know. Are you kidding? Like, I can't. Left-right paradigm thinking is so far out of possible for me. I couldn't possibly associate myself with like a polarity of consciousness. It's just not. It's not in my
good
DNA. Yeah.
And that picture behind you is not of Pepe the Frog.
Oh no, my wife painted that.
It's another green thing. It's not Pepe the Frog.
Oh no, it's not.
So I can continue talking with you, and I won't be thrown out of polite society.
I can't guarantee that.
Yeah, it's true. All right. So hold on. You broke some news there. So are you also saying to me that there are wings of the government, probably it must be the federal government, that are more or less on your side in at least investigating the monopolies held by these social media companies?
I might be saying that.
On antitrust grounds? Wow. So wow. Might the people in those agencies who are doing this work be new appointees, meaning Trump appointees, or are they holdovers, do you know, from the Obama administration? Come on, Bill, give it up.
I don't have that info.
Well,
but I think it's such a multi-headed beast. I don't think that even referring to it as like the government is, it's like we have to for practical purposes. But, the NSA is so fragmented from the CIA, so fragmented from, every other major department. It's just, they're their own universes, and they'll operate, totally independently with no oversight. I think the intelligence agencies are completely rogue.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's the point.
Yeah.
I mean, they're the president's. The CIA was invented to be the president's private army. Now, the thing is, the current CIA and the current president don't get along too well. But although I've heard that actually that's only at the higher levels of the CIA. But anyway, is this known that they're actually being investigated for antitrust violations?
Yeah, I think it is generally known.
Okay,
but it's not. not to maybe a degree of specificity that I just mentioned, but there's been
the thing is
extreme reporting of these
the thing is
investigations.
the goddamn trust really cartel that has been established has been established by the government that's investigating it. As I said, giving them massive tax breaks and massive subsidies that you and other competitors don't get it's called regulatory capture. It's called governmental cartelization. It's like the government picking which businesses will be dominant and then protecting their dominance.
Well, look what just happened with the whole stimulus bailout. The payroll protection program that's supposed to be getting rolled out to small businesses all over the country just got gobbled up by all of the largest corporations that are customers of the big banks. Yep. So actually the small businesses are all the ones who didn't get. Hopefully there will be another wave of I mean,
they just signed it. So yeah,
they just did. Yeah. But that's the same thing.
Wow. Okay. So you're definitely fighting the good fight. All right. I'm going to do my best to participate in Minds and help you out here. I definitely believe in it. You've convinced me so far. So I want to know who you really are. You have these bizarre ideas about non-binary politics. You're not a fan of Pepe the Frog. And you're a young guy. How old are you?
I like memes.
You like me? How old are you?
I'm 34.
34. Yeah. God, why is everybody in my world 34? So how did you get here? How did you get to this place? What's your story?
I was reading your story on your site actually, and there's just some interesting overlap in terms of what I experienced in college, specifically with the socialists. But I don't know, where do you want me to start?
The beginning. Where were you born?
I was born in Manhattan, and I grew up in South Norwalk, Connecticut, on the beach. And it was a beautiful neighborhood, biking around, parents not down my throat, had a bike gang, building forts.
Oh,
pretty classic American shit.
With a fair amount of freedom in it.
Yes, with a fair amount of freedom in it. It was incredible. I couldn't have asked for a better place to grow up. And I actually live I live 10 minutes from there right now.
Okay.
And so let's see, did that, grew up in Fairfield County, outside the city, did public school for a while, then went to boarding school.
Okay.
Hotchkiss.
Okay.
Which, I saw some references to Exeter in your...
Yep.
Who was that?
My stepfather.
Stepfather, yeah. So, it's this sort of incestuous circle of New England boarding schools. Amazing schools. Like I had a wonderful experience there. Had teachers standing on the table like Dead Poets Society kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
And it was awesome. Met some of my best friends there. But also very locked down. Like, if you partied at all, you got kicked out. So that was, I didn't, maybe a couple times, but I didn't get caught. And let's see. So that's where I really started. I majored in English, and that's where I started getting obsessed with writing and.
Okay. And who are your parents?
My parents are John and Peggy. They also grew up in New England. Let's see. My dad's a enterprise software rock star. He's involved. He's on the board of Minds. He's been critical in advising us along the way, and he's a big freedom fighter. Okay. My mom writes children's books. She's super badass.
Oh wow.
And let's see. Yeah. So I'll stop there.
No, that's good. So wow. Okay. So you were well positioned to do this kind of thing. You had a very good education. You experienced a lot of freedom, but you also experienced a fair amount of unfreedom in boarding school.
Yes. I mean, definitely a privileged upbringing. Had every opportunity I could ask for. But interestingly, my elementary school was pretty diverse. It was like, I would say at least 35% minority. So I had, I sort of lived in this little beach town neighborhood, but like, you know, South Norwalk was pretty rough growing up. Like, it was some hardcore neighborhoods, and a lot of my friends. So I did experience a fair amount of racial diversity growing up, and you know, some of my best friends growing up were, you know, all over social and economic areas. So I think that did teach me a fair amount. And then, you know, yeah, after boarding school, went to UVM.
Hold on, that's Vermont. For those who don't know,
Vermont, yeah.
University of Vermont in Burlington, correct?
Yes.
So you were in the heart of Bernie land.
Bernie lands. Vermont's weird though, because you've got, you know, in rural Vermont, it's hardcore libertarian, and then you've got the hyper progressives in Burlington. And so I was definitely rebellious going into that. You know, I knew what I was getting into with Groovy UV. Definitely a party school, but also really pretty strong academically, very left leaning. I didn't really have a political association, but started to get pulled deeply into the progressive socialist world, unknowingly, through my teachers. And, you know, I was very activist. I was leading protests for divestment from weapons manufacturers. That's good. Yeah, see, that's the thing. It's not like so, because there was so much solidarity between the labor activists on campus and the anti-war activists on campus, which that's where my base was, in like anti-war activism. Yeah. But there's this relationship with it's like, if you're anti-war, you sort of have to be with the labor crowd.
Right.
And so, you know, the International Socialists are big in Burlington.
That's my parents' old organization. Yep. Okay. The IS.
And so those meetings were going on, you know, they were really pushing a lot of these activist events. And, you know, part of me was looking at that and I was like, oh, I mean, you know, these people are doing some good activism. But, you know, so Minds really started around that time, and we would do it was actually a live event platform, and we would hold these forums on campus where we would bring professors and students together and do like 6-hour forums about divestment from weapons manufacturers from the university stock portfolio. We did livable wages, and then we would mix that with like a music festival afterwards to kind of lighten it up. And we would do tent cities, and you know, I camped out on the, you know, university lawn for like a couple weeks one time, and it was fun. We stormed the president's office, filmed it. He actually wrote me a letter of recommendation to my first job after college because he liked, you know, even though I stormed his office, he got
co-opted, man. You got co-opted. Sold out to the man, dude, without even knowing it. That's fun.
But I don't know. I mean, I guess I loved my English teachers, but they, you know, they were forcing down my throat the critical theory, and I just putting everything through that lens. And like I had a professor block me on social media because we were just trying, you know, having a healthy debate on, you know, in a private chat, and just because I was talking about libertarian ideology, he just blocked me. And I mean,
wait, did you say libertarian? Did you move toward a libertarian position?
Well, I started after school engaging more in that world, and just sort of, but then, you know, ultimately sort of finding a fusion of different ideas from both sides. And, you know, that wasn't really acceptable. So yeah, I mean, I wrote my thesis on, you know, sort of a postmodern lens, looking at this new megastructure building on the campus.
Wow.
That they built, where, you know, it's called the Davis Center, and we were all protesting against that too, because it was just, you know, sort of flagrant use of funds when we thought that they should be going elsewhere. But, you know, the building was totally postmodern, like nostalgic, like so ugly, like sort of had like a train, like this big clock. Everything's nostalgic with postmodern architecture. It's sort of like a new version of what's old. It's gross. It's
okay.
And so I wrote my whole thesis in lowercase because capitalization.
It's hegemonic or something, right? What is it? What's the problem with capitalization?
My argument was that it should only be capital. You should only use capitals for emphasis, not for, any sort of arbitrary reason of, capitalizing I or, people's names. I don't know. I was off in deep space, but I still sort of am glad I did it. It was just fun.
Yeah. So wait a second. So I hear like, you're kind of like, you start off kind of being kind of old school. When I say old school, I mean like 1960s style lefty. So anti-war and labor, right? That's where the left used to be.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the left used to really care about. And that's when I was involved in the left too, back in the sort of 60s, 70s, and 80s, and maybe 90s. And then I hear you had a brush up with what you call critical theory, which you didn't like so much in your English classes. We can talk about what that was in a second.
Mm-hmm.
And then you mentioned postmodernism, both that you were critical of postmodernism, at least the postmodernist architecture on the campus, but
right.
but that your thesis apparently was sort of postmodernist too. So and then also there's some libertarianism sneaking in here. So this is right. It's the making of Bill Ottman, right?
So
those four things, coming together, at least in terms of your politics, right? It's an interesting mix that I must say I identify with to some degree, as you might know. Yeah.
So, all of my professors, especially my socialist professors, I wouldn't say that there was a direct correlation between the socialist professors and postmodernism. Actually,
exactly. Thank you.
They were ones who would introduce me to the book Fashionable Nonsense.
What's that?
Familiar?
No, what's that?
Oh, it's I think it's the submission of the paper that was a fake paper.
Do you know? Sokal? You're talking about Alan Sokal?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And
so people don't know, Alan Sokal, Soakal,
yeah,
is he a physicist or something? He's a scientist, hard scientist, academic, I think, who in the 90s wrote, and this was basically, there was a reiteration of this recently with my recent guests, James Lindsay and Helen Pluckrose, the grievance studies hoax people. Alan Sokal was the first person to do this. He submitted the deliberately nonsensical article to some scholarly journal, and they accepted it. Oh, in fact, it was Social Text. I know the editors of the text of that. Stanley Aronowitz was one of my sort of closer colleagues when I was in grad school. But anyway, and that was kind of, it was presented as sort of showing that all this critical theory and postmodernism stuff was all bullshit and the whole thing's corrupt and it's empty and blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't a huge fan of the Sokal hoax, although I got the point, and was not a fan of Sokal Squared, which is the recent thing with Lindsay and Pluckrose and Boghossian, because I think there's a lot of value actually in what's called postmodernism, and what's even it's a lot of critical theory. I think there's some stuff that's very useful that people even on the right use, and without even knowing it, early insights. It's just that they've all become really transformed into these tools of authoritarianism, I believe, mostly on campuses. But anyway, sorry.
I think I would agree with you. I don't see there as being no value at all. I mean, even to to critical theory with, the class struggle. I mean, of course there's value to that world of thought. And, but, the idea that socialist professor, advisor was introducing me to Fashionable Nonsense, which is pretty much a book about the Sokal hoax. And, let's see. So they didn't buy into all of it, but yeah, I think that there's sort of a meme happening now that like socialism and postmodernism are like the same, which it's not.
No.
But there, there's relationships, maybe. So yeah.
Okay.
What
So,
next?
yeah. So you're definitely not an alt-right type at that point.
No, I still haven't even like
You
read
sound,
Mein Kampf.
yeah, you should. It's a great book.
I know, I want to.
Well, Hitler was actually a great writer. He was a really
Mhm.
brilliant writer, and his speeches are amazing pieces of work. They're incredibly complex, eloquent, fiery. I mean, they're really impressive pieces of literature. I can't believe I'm going on this tangent, but it's true. I happen to be writing a book in which I had to do 3 chapters on World War II, and in particular the Nazi regime. So I had to read a bunch of Hitler, and I was very impressed with him. But anyway, so your mix of influences is really similar to mine, actually. Really.
Yeah, I was noticing that reading your story, and then so from there we were doing these forums in City Hall parks, at the university, at the Chapel of Sacred Mirrors in New York City, which is Alex Gray's art gallery. I don't know if anyone
Who's that?
with Alex Gray. Oh, he's an amazing visionary artist.
Hmm.
Gotta look him up. He does a lot of the album art for like String Cheese and Tool, and
Okay.
he's just a genius. And so we do these events, very focused on live. I was anti-tech in college.
Oh, wow.
As much as you could be. I was living in Vermont. I was like trying to conduct these sort of Thoreau type experiments with my own life.
Uh-huh.
Writing my papers with, by hand. I would submit these and like with a candle in my house, and trying to, in sophomore year, I did a trash experiment where I tried to consume as little trash as possible. And all the trash that I did consume, I would keep. Just because I wanted to decrease my footprint. I was so vigilant about, global ecology that I was trying to just walk the walk.
Do you feel that? Do you still feel that way about stuff?
I mean, I'm definitely a sustainability nut, but I'm not, I did that. What my cell phone rang in class one time, and I broke it in half in front of the whole class.
Wait, so you're also a bit of a Luddite during this time too, which is okay. That I never had. That was never part of my persona, my profile. I hope this doesn't offend you, but that kind of politics I find to be exclusively practiced by privileged Americans.
Absolutely, is
okay, good.
that is what was happening.
Okay.
That is what I mean. How ridiculous to kind of reject all of the incredible tools that we have at our disposal, totally oblivious to, how much someone who doesn't have that would love to have that and use.
The cell phone that you broke would have been pretty popular in sub-Saharan Africa. They would have liked to have that,
Yeah. But, what I was observing was when my first interaction with Facebook was people were trying to put we called it Gathering of the Minds back then. And they were trying to put it on Facebook. And I was like, what are you doing? But like there was, some of the people that we were working with were setting that up and started getting, ultimately it started getting like millions of followers on Facebook. And I just didn't like what social media was doing to people on a human level. Everybody creating these avatars of them, these fake avatars of themselves, like heads buried in the phone, regardless of privilege. I think that there's a lot of validity to the damage that social media is doing to our psychology.
Yeah.
So
hold on. Can we back up a second? So I just want to place this in time. When was this? When did mine start at UVM? What year are we talking about?
Probably in 2007.
Okay, so Facebook was pretty new then.
Yes. It was just hitting universities.
Yeah, right. I'm that's when I sort of discovered it. Yeah. And it's, you didn't like it even then when it was brand new?
But for generally different reasons. More of sort of unreasonable anti-technology stance.
Okay. Right.
And then after I sort of got my head out of my ass, I started realizing that the internet is sort of this beautiful extension of humanity, sort of like a technological extension of our biology. I started taking more of a holistic view of it as this communication growth of the planet, and how essential it was to our evolution. And just then started embracing it and realized that, you know, the live events are great and real, but also just the ideas are hitting so few people. And
so Minds started out as actually just live events just in Burlington?
Yep.
No, with no live streaming or anything?
No,
just
no.
Okay. just like 20th century versions of you know, socializing.
Yeah.
This was face-to-face in-person events. Okay.
And we started playing around with like internet forums sort of a little bit after. Yeah.
What was it though? Like, what would you do with these things?
We would tackle issues. So with the one about divestment from weapons manufacturers, like we went to the University Financial Office, got the, you know, their whole portfolio, dissected it, talked about it, you know, invited 10 professors, people from the administration, student groups, student government, dissected it, figured out which ones we wanted to divest from. And then we went through this whole process with the administration of, eventually we got the university to divest from like Lockheed Martin and Raytheon and General Dynamics and stuff. And so it was a really authentic process that worked. And because, you know, we weren't just sort of complaining without doing the work that it took to justify why we thought that this didn't align with the core mission of the university. But then we would also, you know, after doing that, just sort of do this like celebration music festival kind of thing. And we would do that in the park, and we would do that in the school too. And because we just were disillusioned. I mean, activism is so boring unless you're bridging it with something that's fun. I mean, the tone is just, and I was pretty aggressive, but I was less aggressive than a lot of the activists on campus who, you know, I just understood that in order to connect with the greater community, we needed to not just be talking about cold hard, you know, divestment.
So wait, so it sounds to me like Minds started out not as a social network, not as an open social network at all, but just as an activist group, a left-wing activist group.
Well, no, because anybody could start one of these events on any topic they wanted.
Okay.
So it was a platform to hold an event. And no, it was definitely, from the very beginning, it was not political, even though I may have been, you know, involved in a couple of events that, even then, we invited both sides. So I was still, I was always focused on inviting both sides. I never was pushing it in an agenda. And, you know, others on our team were really clear about not wanting to be representing one side of the political spectrum. So that was definitely there from the beginning. Even though I might have had more of a bend then, I was still conscious of that, how important it was to be balanced.
So you would actually get people on stage who would defend the university holding defense contractor stock?
Yeah. We went to every member of the administration and wanted to talk to them. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So now I see Minds. Now I see the origin of Minds. That makes sense to me. Right. And so we're talking about like, what, about 12 years ago? Yeah, or 13 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. So it's been going on that long.
Well, that was before. That was a sort of a different incarnation. We didn't incorporate until 2011. So that was pre-incorporation, when it was very much just a loose group.
Yeah, but the culture of it, the ethos of it, right?
Yeah.
Sort of the intentions of it, that's remained fairly consistent. Am I right? From your college days to the present, right?
Yeah, I think that the core philosophy has been consistent, but manifested in different forms.
Sure, different media. Right, got it. Okay, cool. So then you graduate from college, and then do you go straight into tech? Do you take minds into the tech world?
No, I went straight into the next level of live events. I became the marketing director at Gathering of the Vibes Music Festival, which is like a 30,000 person multi-day art and music festival in Connecticut. And that was incredible. And I sort of helped spearhead some of the more like the green vibe stage, which was, some of the activist stuff. But I was just still always very interested in like crowd consciousness, like the power of crowds. I've always loved the idea of bringing people together physically. But then I would sort of write papers esoterically about how, the Earth is an event. Like right now, Earth is a live event. If you zoom out and look at Earth, it's like, oh, that's an event happening there. All those people are there, but we sort of segment ourselves into different events within this. And it's funny how you can sort of feel like, oh, that's that event, but it's actually all one event. So I just really
wait a second. What do you mean by that? You're talking about a collective consciousness?
Well, that, but also Earth in itself is an event. It's the conglomeration of matter and life it's an event that's taking place.
Okay. Do you believe in a collective consciousness, sort of in a Jungian way, C.G. Jung?
I mean, I like to read about it. I don't know if I believe in it.
Yeah. Okay.
It's interesting to me.
Well, I mean, social media is something like that, right? I mean, there is sort of a collective consciousness going on there, I suppose. Yeah, there is. I mean,
there is
multiple collective consciousnesses. Like on Twitter, right? There's political Twitter, there's Black Twitter, there's right-wing Twitter. There's all these, and each one has its own culture, its own language, its own way of being, its own consciousness. You could argue.
Yep, for sure.
Its own mind. Its own mind.
Yes, you can take it a step further and look at some of the consciousness studies that have happened at Princeton and whatnot, where at the Global Consciousness Project at Princeton, they would put these random number generators all over the world and see if they could correlate divergences from the randomness in the random number generators alongside major global events.
Wow.
So, and they did detect a divergence during 9/11 and some other, but who knows if that's, good science. I don't know, but there's lots of groups they're putting energy into that. And and then the idea of minds, we just wanted to call it that because it's sort of a reflection of the community. I mean, it's a reflection of the consciousness of the community. That's what we want it to be. That's why we want it to be as open as possible, because if we restrict ideas, then it's not going to be representative of the thoughts of the community. So and we want people, access to information has always been just key for me. I got very obsessed with looking at classified information, freedom of information movement, and how that relates to, and that bridges into the open source world, into the encryption world, into the world of leaks and, conspiracies a little bit. But, there's the very real classified information world. I've always been, just a huge advocate of more freedom of information, whether it's corporate information or government information.
Why? Where did that come from?
Because I just have always had this sense that in order to evolve the most efficiently as humanity, we need access to the most information and able to be in a position to make informed decisions. If you don't have access to the full spectrum of information about what is going on in the world, then you're not as knowledgeable. So you can't know how to make the best decision about what to do next. And, when a company like Google, or Zoom, which we're on right now, what they've done is, they think that they have this competitive advantage by keeping all of their source code private. But, what that does, maybe in a short-term sense, but in the collective sense, I mean, it's very damaging to our progress, because so there's the privacy problems with it, but when Google doesn't, or Zoom or whoever doesn't share the blueprints to the tool, it means that Joe Schmo has to go and build that tool from scratch, as opposed to having these available blueprints to work from and build on top of. And so instead of putting his energy into building on top of the wheel, or, it's reinventing the wheel, literally. That is what proprietary technology forces people to do. So as opposed to being, way further along because we didn't have to reinvent the wheel a million times, we're just sort of slowly moving on, all because of this competitive myth. And when the reality is that open source can be highly profitable. It is, you can make immense money through open source. All you have to do is look at WordPress. 30% of the internet runs on WordPress. That's an open source platform. Wow. Wikipedia, I mean, it's a top 10. Granted, they don't make a ton of money, but it's achieved total critical mass. It's immensely successful. Linux, the operating system that powers the whole world, all the banks, everywhere uses Linux. There's huge enterprise, billion-dollar enterprises leveraging Linux. So, I loved that idea that sort of the open source, giving the freedom and also profit could be compatible. To me, that's a beautiful thing. It's like, there's this myth that, if you're, you have to be nonprofit and you can't make money if you want to abide by cooperative value structures. But that's just not true. And that's what we're really trying to break, that pattern of thinking where, people, you're scared to release the blueprints because you think you have a competitive advantage. But actually, if you don't, your ability to create network effects is heightened immensely by sharing the code, because suddenly all of these developers are helping you. And so it's just able to spread more. It's like the Grateful Dead, let people record their music. And that created a marketing machine that caused them to rise, and now they're all have millions of dollars. So
the bootleg tapes of Grateful Dead shows, right? Like I remember my college roommates had like stacks of them, and I thought, the Dead is not making a dime off of that, but they were making millions off of that, actually, indirectly, right? All right. So when did Minds become a website? When did it become a social media website?
In 2011. First, we got minds.org.
Okay.
saved up for a while, bought that, and then we started tinkering around.
And what pushed that move? Like, what were you thinking then? You wanted to take on Facebook? You wanted to replace Facebook? You wanted to offer an alternative to Facebook? What was it? Why then?
I just knew that inevitably there would be an open alternative to Facebook. Yeah. Okay. Because we saw it happen with Wikipedia. Even though I'm, obviously not saying that Wikipedia is the best source, because it's not, but it's an incredible human achievement. And so in the world of information, encyclopedias, wow, an open project made it to the top 10 website in the world. That's amazing. It happened with Linux. It happened with WordPress in the realm of blogging, Linux in operating systems. I just figured that it's going to happen with social networks. It's going to happen with money. So that it's happening with Bitcoin. Right. It's in every industry. I think it's going to happen. That it's not that the proprietary versions aren't going to exist, but there's going to be an open version that rises up to be competitive with the proprietary version. So,
yeah. In my industry, higher education, about Renegade University, maybe. We don't do it yet, but we would like to eventually basically help pioneer blockchain accreditation, which makes so much more sense than the way accreditation is done now, right? Which just says BA, University of Vermont on your resume. What does that really mean, right? Blockchain accreditation, will show exactly the courses you took, the grades you got, the papers you wrote, the advisor's recommendation. Every piece of information will be there, right, for you, and it can be distributed anywhere automatically. So you don't need accreditation agencies to sort of put their stamp of approval on an institution, because you can get all the information you want about this guy's education from looking at the blockchain. Right. So I agree with you. I mean, it seems to me that all the industries are headed in this direction.
Let's work on that together. We're actually doing some work on distributed identity, distributed trust, and that's critical with social networking, because when you're engaging with content or individuals, having an identity with all the metadata about who you are and what you've done that's just really essential, especially when you're operating in a realm where there's so much misinformation that you need decentralized identity systems to be able to help you understand who and what you're engaging with. Because we would never think of handling misinformation by just banning it, because then you're ending up banning like satire and comedy and mistakes. Misinformation, you can make a mistake. It's okay to make a mistake.
Or just pictures of the human body, like, why should they be banned, right? That's going to happen too. Right? Or certain bodies, certain kinds of bodies. All right, so you've formed it then with the hope that open source would eventually become the alternative, maybe hopefully the dominant alternative to what Facebook had done, right? And then Twitter eventually. And what that was it in terms of the politics behind it? And who came to you first?
To work on it with?
No, to join, to
join. Our first
users
were actually a lot of them from Facebook, because we had like our small network, probably like a few hundred people or something from our original older network. But then actually those pages that we made blew up on Facebook. And so we ended up I was pretty deep in Facebook for sort of working within the matrix to destroy the matrix for a little while, because it was nuts. Like, we were driving millions and millions of page views per month just by posting alternative news and viral videos and
on Facebook.
But the content was on Minds, but we would post them on these pages that we built with tons of followers on Facebook and drive all the traffic to Minds.
Gotcha.
And then that's when we kept realizing we can't trust Facebook. We have to keep building up our own alternative, because the reach is going down. It's not sustainable, but we decided to just use it while it was sort of available to migrate people over.
Yeah.
And then the Snowden stuff happened.
Okay.
And then we got a huge wave. We got like 250,000 users within like a couple weeks.
Wow.
Because we supported the right to anonymity, and some anonymous pages on Facebook shouted us out, and then the media started running with it. And so, a lot of the mainstream media started saying a new anonymous social network, trying to battle Facebook, and those headlines started flying around. And yeah, just like 250,000 users in a couple of weeks. And from there, that's when it really started.
Oh, that's right. You can be anonymous on Minds.
Yes.
That's right. Okay. That's a huge difference from Facebook, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So the Snowden affair was your
Mm-hmm.
big push, huh?
It was a combination of all of the attention that was getting paid to privacy, but also anonymous. I mean, anonymous was all over the news back then.
Oh, the group.
The group, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The group. And anonymous, that's what I meant when I said anonymous Facebook page. There was this Facebook, there was a couple of anonymous groups that said, yeah, let's check out this place that cares about your privacy more than Facebook. And so it was sort of, that was what was in the air around, I think it was in, maybe like 2013 or somewhere around that time.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the anonymous hacker group.
Yes.
Joined Minds.
Well, the anonymous hacker group is not a group. It's really like
it's a network, right?
There's no centralized structure to it. So, in a way, the headlines were sort of, the media doesn't understand that anonymous isn't a group. They like to think that there's a handful of guys with those masks on sitting at a table, like hacking.
Yeah.
But, and there are probably groups that do that, but it's loose.
Yeah. But I mean, people who identify as being a part of Anonymous came over to Minds in large numbers, it sounds like, around 2013.
Yes.
Okay. Did you not get attention from law enforcement at that point? Because Anonymous was doing quote unquote bad things at that point, right?
No, we didn't.
No?
No. And honestly, I'm some of the anonymous people were not happy about that because they didn't like that, the name was being used. It's so fragmented that you had some anonymous people who were like, oh, this is great. Others who were like, wait a second, why are we trusting this site? Which is good. I want them to be doing that. Mm-hmm. And so there was, a little bit of controversy there where like some parts of Anonymous were like, hey, let's wait and see how this plays out. You shouldn't just, trust the site. Who are these people? Which is exactly what Anonymous should be saying. Yeah. So, it was interesting.
I'm just wondering if there's like a culture of Minds, do you see a culture, like a political culture? Is there a vibe?
Yeah.
Sensibility?
Yeah, there's a vibe. It's very,
how would you describe it?
Grassroots, anti-authoritarian. I mean, whether it's the progressives or the libertarians that we have, there's definitely an anti-authoritarian bridge between those sides. Yeah.
So it sounds very similar to both Unregistered and Renegade University. Basically, anybody who's outside the establishment, on the left or the right, top or bottom, whatever, right? If you're just outside of the blob in the middle.
Right.
The liberal conservative consensus, basically, which is what I think it is, inside, that's been running the country for 200 years. Anything that's outside, that's not allowed to be taught in classes in universities, that's what we have at Renegade University. My guests are people like you who are outside of that way of thinking, the dominant discourse, left or right. My guest list has been I've had conservatives, I've had semi-fascists, I've had racists, I've had communists, I've had socialists, I've had libertarians, I've had all kinds. That's so fascinating. Okay. So it's the same, it's a very similar vibe. And you grew with the Snowden affair. You attracted a lot of people there because they saw this as a possible way to escape surveillance, I suppose, right?
Yep.
And to sort of stand for anonymity and to stand for, distance from the state. I would imagine that's what you guys represented, right? And then what happened from there, from 2013 on?
So from there, we, just kept building, kept trying to make the the platform competitive. We're still not there, but we're closer than we've ever been. And in 2015, 2016, that's when a lot of the free speech stuff started ramping up.
Yeah.
And so from there, we got another huge wave of growth from a lot of the big YouTubers who were sort of, in sort of the skeptic community. We, got people like Sargon and Tim Pool and Jordan Peterson signed up, and that crew, the sort of intellectual dark web crowd,
Sort of right of center.
Right of center. And then we got, but also just, it transcends. There's a lot of the demonetization is affecting everybody. So on YouTube, so we have seen just like sort of mainstream like musicians, a handful of them are like they resonate with what we're doing, and so that's been kind of cool. There's a huge surge from Vietnam because Facebook, another 200,000 in like 2 days signed up when this law got announced in Vietnam, which was basically a revolving door between Facebook and their government, where it was under it was a surveillance or cybersecurity law where the Vietnamese government could just tell Facebook to ban certain people, and then a handful of journalists signed up from Vietnam, brought that whole crowd over, and that was awesome. But all the same vibe. It was sort of the Vietnamese anti-authoritarian press.
Because Vietnam, last I checked, which was about 2 years ago, had the strictest censorship of the internet of any country on earth. Basically, the internet is essentially illegal in Vietnam, so that people bring in huge chunks of the internet on flash drives. And they just import flash drives with like big, all of Wikipedia or Minds or whatever. They bring that in and people stick it into their computers, and that's how they access the internet. They don't do it directly, right? It's heavily, heavily censored.
Yeah, it is. And actually just this week, it came out that the Vietnamese government was throttling Facebook.
Wow. Yeah.
And Facebook agreed to restrict anti-government content in exchange for Vietnam unthrottling them. This is in Reuters like 2 days ago.
Oh, wow.
So so it's a
So you got a number of Vietnamese people to join Minds. Is that what happened?
Yes.
Who were trying to escape, but how do they do that if it's censored in Vietnam?
Well, the internet's not completely censored in Vietnam.
Right. But they would censor Minds, wouldn't they? If they knew,
we're maybe a little bit under the radar because
maybe.
we're not quite big enough. But I think one ISP did censor us there, and I think a lot of people in Asia are pretty competent with VPNs, and you can get around it.
That's right, VPNs. Yeah, that's how they do it. Okay, that's fantastic that you did that. Wow, that's heroic, man. I mean, like, you must feel really good about that. I would be so stoked.
It was funny. Of course. We have, so I'm actually a fellow at the Boston Global Forum which is sort of it's at Harvard. It's with Michael Dukakis and a bunch of professors, and they're talking about cybersecurity and AI and all this kind of stuff. So I go and participate there once in a while. But Tuan Nguyen, who is on our advisory board, he actually started the internet in Vietnam.
Wow.
And but he's controversial. So he's definitely, I think, a freedom fighter, but he's very well connected with the Vietnamese government. And so actually a bunch of the activists saw that he was on our advisory board and were like, hey, that guy's like a establishment guy. But not that, I don't know. So actually there was a little bit of fallout from the Vietnamese crowd because of that, but I don't know what to say about that. It's kind of, it's tough with this world of anti-authoritarians, because you just engaging with the establishment, when you do, you really have to be careful, because I don't think that being able to go mainstream is very important, and we have to do so without diverging from our value system.
Mm-hmm.
But to some of those people, even myself in at a certain time, like if you see a relationship between the establishment and minds, then that's automatically negative. Like there's no conversation to be had. So I mean we want to have a conversation with everybody.
Okay.
I don't want to just forever be in this sort of peripheral world of the edge. I think that that's the essential core community that we always need to remember, and that's who we are. But if we're ever going to propel this model to a critical mass, we have to be able to engage with the mainstream. So doing that in a way that doesn't compromise our value system, I think is the challenge. But for instance, like when I went on Tucker, I got a lot of people being like, "Oh, you're in mainstream media." It's like, well, is it not okay to talk to, like, since when is the anti-authoritarian crowd anti-discourse?
Right.
I don't think that's not. I think it can get a little bit stubborn sometimes.
Now, if you went on the Tucker Carlson show and then the next day Minds started promoting Tucker Carlson, and like driving people to Tucker Carlson's site or whatever, that would be a different matter. But you were actually using, I assume, you were using him to get the idea of Minds into the public.
Sure, I'll talk to anybody. I'll talk to any news outlet. Doesn't matter. And then I guess the most recent progression has been in response to a lot of these progressive rags that love to act like we're all right or something. I take that and I try to integrate it in, try to understand where they're coming from as opposed to just reject it. Like there's a reason that they're trying to call us far right. There's something that I feel like actually we're doing wrong. If it's so easy for them to say that, I don't think that we're communicating well enough with them to make that justified. And some people you're never going to be able to avoid that with. But I've been focusing on de-radicalization a lot, just reading a lot of papers about it and what works.
What do you mean by de-radicalization?
I mean, in terms of, just studying extremist groups and how they grow on the internet.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of different bodies of information, some of which try to say that a site like us is amplifying extremism. But actually, the bulk of the data that I've come across shows that the censorship actually creates radicalization and extremists more than the platforms that actually allow the content.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I don't want you to be even concerned with that. I first of all, the term extremist is one of my least favorite.
Okay.
Right.
Sure.
You probably can guess why, right? I mean, anything can be labeled as extremist, and it just means, again, outside the establishment way of thinking. Whether you're left or right, you can be called an extremist if you just don't think the way that Hillary Clinton and Mitch McConnell think, right? So,
Right.
I mean, really, that's how narrow it is. That's how
I
narrow.
agree with you. And I would say,
And then I'm sorry, and then de-radicalization. What's wrong with being radical, right? That term implies that being radical is something to be done away with.
I
And
agree with that.
okay.
And I think I'm able to coexist while being able to identify as an extremist and radical in certain ways, and also understand that you have to use language to, when you're talking about neo-Nazis or ethno-supremacists, whether they're white or black or whatever they are,
Mm-hmm.
okay, from any race that you have ethno-supremacists.
Sure.
That exists. So you have racism in every race. You have, violent people in every race. You have you have extreme content in every. You have pornography. You have you have self-harm. You have child porn. You have all of what would be categorized as extreme. Is there another word you would use to sort of for a lot of that type of stuff?
No, I don't want to label any of that extreme.
What would you label it?
Though, just what you labeled it. I mean, to label it as extremist is to dismiss it. And I would rather know it, understand it, study it. And maybe in some cases, it might be something I like.
Yeah, no, me too, right? Me too. Yeah, but the
or dislike, and I want to find out how I can get away from it, right? But I want to know how many neo-Nazis there are, how powerful they are, what they think, especially. I really want to know what they think.
Yes.
Right? And who wouldn't want? So I want them to have a voice. I want them
to
be on Facebook and Twitter, and I want them to be everywhere. I want them to have TV shows so I can watch them. I want them to have movies so I can go. I want to know if you have a Hitler who might be on the rise, don't you want to know exactly what he thinks? I do, and how powerful he might become. I do. I want to know everything about him and his followers. It's so.
And the only way the next Hitler
so obvious.
Will have any. It is obvious. The only way the next Hitler will have any chance at engaging in discourse which would cause him to change his views is to have access to people who he can engage with, which requires him to be able to have a voice. So, but for the purposes of like a pornographic image, let's use an example.
Okay.
So on Minds we use NSFW and explicit. Which, first of all, I actually am open to changing the word. We don't use the word extreme on Minds for how we label it.
Thank you.
But I'm a little bit more, I guess, open to.
What's wrong with porn? What's wrong with porn?
Nothing's wrong with it. But if I think that, do you think that porn shouldn't have a blur over it for a 13-year-old who signs up?
No. I mean, when I was 13, I wanted to watch porn, and I did watch porn, and I don't regret it. I mean,
right, but
and I'm not the only 13-year-old who did that. So
right, and we don't actually.
And right now, any 13-year-old, any 4-year-old, any 7-year-old can click immediately onto Pornhub and watch anything they want, right? So what exactly is the point here? Like,
well, I agree with that, but I think that, and that's why I always thought that it was like, how hypocritical is it for, if you look at the top 100 websites in the world, it's like half porn and half like all the major social networks.
Yeah.
So, when people act like they're against that kind of content, it's like, well, no, you're not. It's open in your other browser tab. You're on Facebook and you're on Pornhub.
One of the greatest moments in podcasting history, John Ronson's series on Pornhub. I don't know if you've listened to it. It's phenomenal.
Oh, no.
Oh my God, it's amazing. It's like a 4 or 5 part series podcast. And he interviews the head of Pornhub, who's like this, multi-billionaire Belgian guy, I think. And he's like, I find it very interesting how much criticism we get from Americans about what we do and how many court cases are, brought against us, because we happen to know that just yesterday, 185 million Americans visited Pornhub. which accounts for basically every single adult human being in the United States. So the hypocrisy is just rampant, as you're saying here. But here's the thing about porn. I don't believe that sex is harmful. I don't believe that viewing sex is harmful, even for children.
Mm-hmm.
I saw my father having sex many times when I was a child. He was just a
Mm-hmm.
weird hippie. That's the one thing he did that didn't harm me, actually, I believe. But there's this puritanical, old belief in our culture, right? That just seeing sex, being exposed to sexuality in any way, is going to damage the psyche of even adults, but especially of children, which has just never been proven. And I don't believe it. I think it's basically repression.
I agree. And that's why we're all for any type of content.
Cool. Awesome. But you still label it. You label it. You warn us.
We do label it because we didn't used to, but we do because of control. And a core value of ours is the ability to control your experience. And if we don't label it, then this is the proof of the feedback we've received is that people repeatedly sign up and see things that they don't want to see. So that to me is, I don't want people to see what they don't want to see. I want them to see what they want to see, and I want them to be able to see anything that's out there.
Right.
So without labeling it, we were getting so many people who are just like, I'm out of here. Like you're showing, like I'm coming across things that I just don't want to.
But can't you curate your newsfeed on Minds?
You can, yeah. But we do have like discovery feeds where, like trending content can rise up to the surface and it gets through it. And so from that perspective, it's like,
well, it's like it's just like, it's like walking down the street.
It's
in
not
in a city. No, it is. It's like walking down the street in a major city. Like it's walking down Market Street in San Francisco or down Christopher Street in New York City. You know what I mean?
It's way worse.
No, but you're going to see all kinds of things you don't want to see. It's called humanity.
It's not, if you would have to be walking through late night, 3 a.m. at Burning Man, or not even Burning Man. You would have to be at like some sort of hybrid neo-Nazi rally where everybody's naked. Like you would have to be at the weirdest event.
I want to go there now, tomorrow. A naked Nazi event. Hell yeah. A nudist. Well, the Nazis were into nudism, yeah. So they would just be wearing the little hats, that'd be good. I'm into that.
But wait, I'm down. I'll go talk to them. And
but it is humanity, man. It is. I mean, it's concentrated, it's distilled, but yes, you walk down the street in a major city, you're going to walk by somebody who's probably a fascist or a racist or a this or a that, and a porn star or watches porn or is half naked or all the way naked, or, and the billboards, for God's sake, are going to have all kinds of half naked.
Yep.
And not to mention television, and the internet. And I mean,
but half naked. So,
all right, fine.
But so that's what I'm saying. Like personally, I turn off all the filters. I turn them all off because I want that sort of totally unfiltered experience. But the fact is that it is very difficult to control. And I think that people deserve control. And I think that the people who want, the difference of when you sign up and clicking a button that, I want to see everything, that's all it is. So you have to make that decision when you're signing up. And I think that it's a fair compromise, because it's like we're still allowing it all. And like when, does it really make that, is it important to you for people to see that who don't want to see it?
Great question for me. I would like for people to know what's going on in the world. I won't force them to do that. I won't shame them, but I would rather they know, that anal sex is a thing, I mean, I would rather them know that there are acts of violence out there. I'd really love for them to know about, what war looks like, which is really X-rated in a violent way.
Yep.
Triple X violence, right? Yeah, I would rather people be knowledgeable about the world around them. And that's, 165 or 180 million Americans watch Pornhub every day. So it's good. I think they should know that, and they should not just know it, but like see it in a sense, like get a sense of, how ubiquitous that is, right? Because that's such a huge part of our culture, but we never talk about it, right? It's talk about repression, and you know what repression does to people's minds and to cultures on a mass scale like that, where everybody's watching porn and no one is talking about it.
Oh, it's so odd.
Everyone watches porn and no one is allowed to say that. So that's going to do more damage, I believe, than a 10-year-old clicking on an anal sex video, frankly.
I agree. And we have, by our nature, fused together, a typical social network with all of that underground content. It's all in one place on Minds.
Cool.
It's all there. So we just made a slight compromise in terms of giving people the control to not fully, like, if you're on the site, it's there. And you can open up the blinds anytime you want, or just keep the windows wide open. So yeah. But see, the press is so predatory about this issue, and we want to have firepower at our back, and because the data is on our side with what you're saying, with why people need to be exposed to these things in order to evolve, and in order even to change bad ideas, you need to engage it. So we brought on Daryl Davis to our advisory board, who is a Black guy who de-radicalized over 200 members. He got 200 guys to leave the KKK.
Yep.
By just befriending them.
Yeah, he's famous. Yeah.
He's famous. Yeah. And I started a podcast with him, and he's just, you can't argue with it. It's real. It's results. And it has been so important to helping convey our message, because it's so easy to talk about, anti-censorship without that sort of undeniable evidence of, the people leaving the KKK, and this is how people leave the KKK. Censorship has never caused anyone to leave the KKK. All that censorship has done is cause the KKK people to get worse and go and find a steep, underground area to go talk about their ideas. So this is what we need to call out Facebook and Google and Twitter and all of them on, is that they're the ones creating the KKK people.
Yep.
And so that's it. It's a fact.
Good. Back to Freud here, what he called that, the return of the repressed. He's, the argument in Civilization and its Discontents is repression, especially on a societal level, will cause the people who are repressed to return in worse forms. They'll become even nastier and meaner and more anti-civil and anti-civilization, and a more difficult problem for civilization to handle. And so I think that's true. I mean, if you look at the way that people think in these dark corners, these dark censored corners of the internet, it's like off the wall. Like they're like less civilized than any human beings ever have been, in a way, at least the way they think, who knows how they operate in society. But yeah, I agree with you. I just like open discourse. I mean, because I'm curious. It's not so much that I think that people are going to be cured of their racism through open discourse. It might happen. That's not why I'm into it. I'm just a curious person. And I'm also, as I said, I want to know if there's someone out there who wants to kill me, and I want to know why they want to kill me, and I want to so I can be prepared for it. So maximum information at all times is what I'm interested in. Not because it's going to serve some other social good. I think it's a social good in itself.
Completely agree. And yeah, I mean, we don't expect to, have huge numbers of people leaving the KKK suddenly. I mean, that's a long game. I mean, it takes decades.
That's impossible, because there are not large numbers of people in the KKK. So all 12 of them would leave maybe, but microscopically small organ. That's the other thing. Like truly racist organizations in this country, are essentially insignificant.
Mm-hmm.
They have tiny numbers. They have zero institutional power. They are the pariahs of this country.
Yep.
Only pedophiles are lower on the scale, right, of the social hierarchy.
And this is why the big networks and media are trying to make normal conservative people the new racists, to just radically increase that number. And you know, it's getting to such an absurd point where I mean, not even Nazis and KKK members, you know, they're not the ones that are even getting the attention. It's like, you know, Steven Crowder, like
Right.
he's a conservative dude, like making jokes, like, and
Yeah.
it's like that. He is a race, like he is racist to a large amount of the population, because that's what the media is trying to create. So, you know, the media, that's a little bit of a lazy
No, you're right.
word, but yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Mainstream media. All right. So so where is Minds now? How many users do you have? How much has it grown? How is it doing now? What's the prognosis? Tell us. Recruit us.
I feel like you got to play hard to get in order to.
Oh, really? Is that the strategy?
I hate pitching. I feel like the anti-pitch is the best pitch.
Well, that's what you've been doing. Yeah, no, I think I agree with you. And I think the
Yeah.
way you've been talking for the last hour and a half is far more attractive than you trying to sell us on it. But I want you to pitch us now because I believe in your project.
So yeah, we've got like 2.25 million users now. We have not, you know, spent any money on growth or anything yet.
Like marketing?
No, no.
Your marketing is for shit. As I said, like I thought you
Yeah.
were Milo Yiannopoulos before we started recording.
Is that just from a quick Google search?
Oh no, I mean just from like vaguely following the politics of this over. I told you, like
Right. Just
that's all.
maybe
I
coming
thought you were
across
that.
it.
Yeah, I thought you were that thing that
Mhm.
happened, but no, you're not. Okay.
Right. So yeah, I mean, amazing core community of artists and musicians and journalists and just people getting their content out there and growing very naturally. You know, people who are fed up with all the nonsense or for a million different reasons. And so, you know, we're happy with the trajectory and just trying to talk to more people like you and engage, because I feel like these arguments are pretty bulletproof. So I'm not really stressed about rapid growth. I think that we, you know, based on what we've seen so far, it's like huge spike, chill growth, huge spike, chill growth. And that's typically how it happens. So I think that when we're ready to hit, you know, tens, hundreds of millions of users, if ever, it's going to happen because we've, you know, magnetized the right people for the right reasons. And yeah, I think that I'm just not attached to growth for growth's sake. We're trying to create a sustainable business model so that we can, you know, be healthy. And, you know, we think that helping other people make money, hopefully will help us make money. If we can provide a platform for, you know, a regular old big YouTuber to get paid and not have to worry about their COVID-19 video getting demonetized, that, you know, there's going to be a lot of magnetism towards that.
Yeah. So how do you do monetization? How do people get paid on Minds?
They can get paid in local currency or in crypto. And because, so the limitation that we have with paying people out in their currency is with Stripe. So, but we have actually a decent relationship with Stripe, and we pay people out who do NSFW content with crypto, and we pay everybody else out. They can get dollars or crypto. And so that's sort of the compromise that we've made.
But I mean, how does one get paid? Through views, number of views or listens or something? Or?
Yep. Views. And also you get commissions. Like if you make referrals and people buy Minds Plus, you get a cut of that. And also people can just pay you directly. Your followers can send you money. So we're coming at it from every angle we can. We're also about to launch a revenue share on our premium content. So basically anyone can submit premium content to Minds Plus, and the people who drive the most traffic to the content get paid out. So sort of like a community powered Netflix model, where imagine if anyone could submit to Netflix, and based on the traffic that the videos that get the most traffic, that's who gets paid out.
Wow.
So that's, I think that has potential. And so that should be rolling out in a few months. And
cool.
Yeah, we're psyched.
Cool. I like it all. What are you stressed out about?
Revenue is stressful because, and we are considering doing, more equity crowdfunding rounds, which allow people to participate and get vested interest in the actual company itself. So, just creating a really sustainable business model is a little bit stressful to me, because there's this Silicon Valley mode of thinking where you can just like keep raising money and you don't really have to think about fundamental business metrics, which is, it's just these unicorn companies that are in la la land. And I'm really trying to get away from that. And so, building a sustainable business is very difficult.
I know. I'm doing it myself. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
What do you do for, do you do crowd subscriptions? What's your model?
Yeah, basically subscriptions. Yeah. It's both for the podcast and for Renegade University. Yeah. You become a member and then you get access to everything in RU. Yeah.
Nice. Well, I'm curious.
Yeah. Well, go ahead. I mean, we should talk. I feel like there's,
we should talk.
I don't know exactly what it is, but I feel like there's a partnership here, There's something we can do. There's so much overlap, and there's definitely shared sensibility here, and shared objectives, and shared histories in some sense, and also shared visions of the future. I think in big ways, So I don't know, but
I'm feeling that. Yeah, I think Renegade University and Minds may be able to sync up somehow. So yeah, I'm curious how are you finding what's happening now affecting what you do? Like, is it affecting your business? Is it, or is it sort of?
Well, I mean, there's the collapse of higher education, which is happening, and it's impending, and it's going to be this fall. It's going to be very serious. I mean, I just saw an article yesterday in the Daily Beast predicting 1,000 colleges will close in the next year, which I think is about right. I mean, they were already on the ropes, many of them, and I used to teach at them, and I knew the administrators quite well. So I was hearing constant reports of enrollment declines. And, the birth rate is declining significantly in the United States, which is really killing them. There just aren't as many college-age people anymore in the United States. So they already were closing. And then who's going to pay 50 or 60 grand for a Zoom meetings, right? I mean, that's not going to happen. So, and a lot of those colleges, they've been sucking on the teat of the federal government for a long, long time through this accreditation scam. The federal government controls accreditation. To get accredited, you have to be approved by the government, which means that I can't get accreditation because you have to have this, and this to get accreditation. It's a huge monopoly created by the government, and then the bubble created by the federal loans program, right? All that artificial demand being pumped in. The whole thing's going to come, not the whole thing, but much of it's going to come down. I mean, Harvard will still exist, although even they have a pay freeze now, like at Harvard, the wealthiest institution ever. And Stanford has a pay freeze too,
Wow.
So the second tier colleges, like places like UVM and where I went, Antioch College, was a third tier college. Good luck. I think they're going to be toast, many of them. So that means a whole lot of people, students wanting information and wanting to talk to professors and instructors. And it also means a whole bunch of unemployed professors too. So
I feel so.
So I'm bullish for us. This is this is all good for us. And
it is. Yeah, we sensed it.
And I was gonna say, and so for the pandemic, like I mean, we had in-person events with RU, but most of our stuff has always been online.
Mm-hmm.
So we have streaming video courses, and we do webinars, and we do office hours just like this on Zoom with instructors one-on-one. And so the pandemic was great for us. People were at home, doing this already.
Yeah.
We were here. Yeah, we're the future.
Yeah, we've noticed a boost as well. And it's just, so distributed work and learning has been happening for a long time. I mean, I've sort of I've become we're homeschooling now. I mean, our daughter is, she's home, and watching her learn on, she's learning piano on the internet. She's absorbing information so quick. Oh, there she is.
Right on cue.
Okay.
What are you talking about?
I was just
talking about you
saying how good you are at the piano. Yeah. So she's sending me. We have a telegram service running underneath the door to my office right now.
Back to your roots, man. Your anti-technology roots. I like it.
So, yeah, I mean, the momentum is moving towards distributed everything, and I just feel bad for like the restaurant. I mean, even like best restaurants in the world are fucked. So that's just crazy how you could become so expert at something, and there's no other venue to do food like that well.
It's so terrible.
It's so terrible.
Imagine, I mean, yeah, like being a brilliant chef, building this restaurant, which is the hardest business in the world, building it. It's a huge success. Everybody's coming. You're on top of the world. You're celebrated. You get a 4-star review in the New York Times, and then wham, zero revenue for a month or 2 months or 3 months, none, zero. And you got to pay rent at the same time, and all your staff is unemployed now. It's bad, but we, Minds and Renegade University, will be stronger than ever. So, and we'll try to help out, if we can.
Yeah, maybe there'll be a new wave of people catering. I don't know. Maybe there's got to be an angle for the best chefs to still. Yeah,
they'll figure it out.
Still spread their gospel.
They'll come back eventually, but it's going to be a hard hit. But hey, man, this has been great. And you know what? I want to seriously, let's have another meeting privately to talk about what we can do together. Because I think there's a lot we can do. So, Bill, thanks for coming on. You're a fascinating guy. I think Minds is a fantastic project. I wish I had known much more about it before this. But I do encourage everyone to at least take a look at it. It's free to join. And you'll see what Bill's talking about here. But a social network that is free of censorship, free of government control, that doesn't spy on you, that doesn't give away your information to the NSA or the CIA. That's exactly what we need. That has an agnostic ethos also about it, right? I mean, that's exactly what we need. So God bless you, man. I'll promote you.
Likewise, man. I'm psyched to dive into the Renegade world as well. So
awesome.
Have a great one. Talk soon.
Thanks, Bill. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
This is the Unregistered Podcast, and I'm Thaddeus Russell. To experience the new Renegade University, go to renegadeuniversity.com. Thanks for listening.